The spotlight hit my face as I walked onto the gymnasium stage in my grandmother's vintage pearl-white dress. 300 people stood and cheered. I smiled, imagining this would be my crowning moment, literally, since I'd just won prom queen. But then the screen behind me flashed to life. A video. Me. From freshman year. My stomach dropped. The whole gym gasped as images played. Me crying in the bathroom. Me talking about my insecurities. Me saying things I'd only ever whispered to my best friend. The laughter started. First, a few nervous giggles. Then, uncontrollable roaring. I stood frozen, my mouth open. My date abandoned me on stage. Parents covered their children's eyes. And there she was, Brittany Cole, prom queen runner-up, sitting in the front row with her phone out, recording my tears streaming down my face. That moment lasted 3 seconds. It destroyed 3 years of friendship. As I ran off that stage, humiliation burning through my veins, I didn't know that video would change my life forever. I didn't know I'd become something more than a victim. I didn't know the truth behind Brittany's cruelty was about to unravel everything. I locked myself in my bedroom for exactly 13 hours. By the time I checked my phone, everything had exploded. The video had been uploaded to TikTok by an anonymous account, and it had 2.3 million views. 2.3 million people had watched me fall apart. Comments flooded in. Some supportive, mostly cruel. She deserved it, one said. What a loser, said another. My Instagram messages overflowed with hate and pity in equal measure. People I didn't even know were creating versions of the video, remixing my tears with sad music and mocking my reactions. But what hurt most was the silence from my friends. Not a single text. Not one call asking if I was okay. They'd seen it. They'd watched it. They'd scrolled past my suffering like I was entertainment. My mom knocked softly on my door, bringing me soup I wouldn't eat. She wanted to call the police. My dad wanted to sue the school. But I just stared at my ceiling, wondering how Brittany, my best friend since 5th grade, the girl who'd held my hand through my parents' divorce, could do this to me. That night, something shifted inside me. The hurt was turning into something else. Something dangerous. And I realized I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to do something about it. Detective work began Tuesday morning. I created a fake Instagram account and started investigating. Who uploaded the video to TikTok? The trail led to a burner account, but the timing matched perfectly with Brittany's activity. She'd been preparing for this moment. But Brittany alone couldn't have done this. She didn't have access to all those videos. I dug deeper, searching through old photo albums and messaging threads. That's when I found it, a group chat I'd been removed from called Project Rosa. Brittany, Jasmine, Marcus, and Tyler. For people I trusted. For people who'd been collecting ammunition against me for months. They'd recorded me after school. They'd taken screenshots of private conversations. Jasmine had even gotten a video of me crying alone in the library. They'd been assembling a weapons cache of my worst moments, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy it. The evidence was clear. This wasn't a spontaneous prank. This was calculated, deliberate, and cruel. They'd given themselves a code name. They'd created a system. They'd turned my pain into a project. My hands shook as I printed everything out. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This was a conspiracy. They'd plotted this for months, and now I had proof. The only question was, what was I going to do with it? Thursday afternoon, someone unexpected appeared at my locker. Marcus's best friend, James. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his backpack straps. Can we talk? He whispered. We sat in the empty cafeteria, and he laid everything out. James had been added to the group chat but refused to participate. He'd watched the plan unfold and felt sick about it. When the video dropped, he'd wanted to come forward immediately, but he was scared. Scared of losing his friends. Scared of becoming a target like me. But then his little sister, who was in 7th grade, told him she'd been crying about the video. Not because of me, but because she was afraid that kind of thing would happen to her. James realized the impact rippled way beyond just me. I want to help, he said, sliding a flash drive across the table. I copied everything from their group chat, all the messages, all the plans. They thought I was still on board, so I never got kicked out. My heart raced. This changed everything. I suddenly had an insider. I had documentation. I had testimony. I also had a serious choice to make. I could destroy these 4 people with what I had. I could end their high school experience. I could make sure everyone knew what they'd done. But looking at James's conflicted face, I realized something. Revenge doesn't have to be destruction. Friday night, I sat in my room and made a list. All the ways I could hurt them. Delete their college applications. Send the evidence to the police. Post everything on social media. Leak it to the local news. I could destroy them. Completely and totally. But then I thought about what they'd done to me. They created chaos. They'd spread pain. They'd made me feel small and worthless. If I responded with the same energy, I'd become exactly like them. Worse, actually. At least they'd been stupid enough to leave evidence. I'd be calculating about it. That's when I realized the real power I had. Not in revenge, but in something much harder, in control. In narrative. In showing the world who I really was versus who they tried to make me seem like. I had another idea. Not perfect, not without consequences, but something that felt right. Something that would be fair. I called James and asked him to bring 4 people I could trust. People who knew everything. People who'd seen the group chat. People who were tired of the culture of cruelty in our school. We're not going to destroy them, I told my small team Saturday morning. We're going to expose them. We're going to tell the truth. And we're going to make sure the truth is undeniable. Saturday and Sunday, I spent time with my new allies. James, his younger sister Sophia, my neighbor David, who'd been secretly documenting bullying at our school for a podcast, and surprisingly, Kevin, a boy who'd been humiliated by the same group last year. Each of them brought something crucial to the table. James had the inside knowledge. Sophia represented the younger students affected by this culture. David had video equipment and journalism experience. Kevin understood the psychology behind their cruelty. He'd noticed patterns in how they targeted people. They do this every few months, Kevin explained, pulling out a notebook filled with research. Freshman year, it was Sarah Johnson. Sophomore year, it was Derek Martinez. They follow a pattern. They identify someone vulnerable. They gather material. They strike at a public moment. Then they move on to the next target. How many people? I asked, my voice quiet. 7 that I know of. Maybe more. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about me at all. Brittany wasn't some uniquely evil girl who'd randomly decided to hurt her best friend. She was part of a system. A cycle. She'd likely been hurt by someone, then hurt others to feel powerful. That's when I understood what we had to do. We couldn't just address what happened to me. We had to break the cycle. We had to make sure no one else became a project. Monday morning, we executed phase 1. David and I walked into the school library and approached Brittany, Jasmine, Marcus, and Tyler casually, like nothing had changed. We'd planned every word. Hey guys, I said, sitting right next to Brittany. I just wanted to say thanks for the memories at prom. It really made it unforgettable. I'm doing something cool and wanted to see if you participate. They exchanged confused glances. Brittany looked suspicious but intrigued. What do you mean? She asked. A documentary, David said, about social media culture and how it affects us. We're interviewing students about why they post things, how it makes them feel, what they regret. And you want us to be in it? Marcus asked skeptically. Yeah, I want to show different perspectives. I want to show that sometimes people do things they're not proud of. The trap was set. Subtle. Non-threatening. Exactly what they'd expect from a girl too broken to fight back. They agreed. Of course they did. They thought they were in control. They thought they'd already won. They had no idea that their own phones, filled with evidence, were about to become their confession. Wednesday night at 8 p.m., we uploaded the first video. No preamble. No explanation. Just a 7-minute compilation. It started with a simple title card. The truth about the prom video. Then came the screenshots of the group chat. Each message displayed clearly. We need more videos of her crying, Brittany had written. Make sure you get the timestamp so people know it's real, Jasmine had responded. The evidence of their planning was undeniable and methodical. Next came the interviews we'd secretly recorded. We'd edited their voices, so they were answering questions they never knew we were asking. Why do you think people are cruel? Their answers, stitched together from different parts of conversations, almost seemed like confessions. Brittany's voice. I don't know because they deserve it. Jasmine. Because it's funny. Marcus. Because she's always acting like she's better than us. The final section was raw footage of me, on camera, talking about what it felt like to be betrayed. Not crying. Not angry. Just honest. The video ended with a simple statement. This is what happens when we turn other people's pain into entertainment. Within 2 hours, it had 800,000 views. Within 4 hours, my school's name was trending on Twitter. By Thursday morning, the narrative had spiraled in a direction I never anticipated. News outlets had picked up the story, but they were framing it wrong. Headlines read, "High school girl orchestrates revenge plot against bullies and student creates elaborate trap to expose attackers." I hadn't trapped anyone. I'd just shown the truth. But the media didn't care about nuance. They wanted a story, a villain, a hero, and somehow I'd become a vigilante in their version of events. People were calling for Brittany, Jasmine, Marcus, and Tyler to be expelled. Parents were demanding investigations. Local politicians were suddenly interested in school bullying. The police department announced they were looking into whether criminal charges could be filed. The thing I hadn't anticipated was how fast everything would escalate. I'd wanted to expose the truth and create change. I'd wanted Brittany to understand the impact of what she'd done. Instead, I'd accidentally created something that felt like a witch hunt. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Interview requests. I hate mail. Some people call me courageous, others calling me cruel. News vans parked outside my house. Random people messaging to share their own bullying stories. Friday morning, my principal called me into her office and told me school was being shut down for the day because there was so much media presence. She looked exhausted. She looked like she had no idea how to handle any of this. That's when I realized I'd started something I couldn't control. Saturday evening, a different video appeared. It wasn't from us. It was from Brittany. She sat in front of her camera, raw and red-eyed, and she told her own story. "I want to explain why I did what I did," she started, her voice breaking. Not as an excuse, as a context. She talked about her own trauma, how in 8th grade, her older brother had been publicly humiliated online, how it had destroyed him, how he'd attempted suicide, how watching that happen had made her angry at the world, how she convinced herself that if she hurt people first, she couldn't be hurt, how she built a fortress of cruelty because being vulnerable felt like dying. "Maya was my best friend," she said through tears. "And I think that's why I attacked her. Because she knew all the broken parts of me, and I couldn't handle anyone seeing those parts. So I tried to break her first." The comments section exploded. People were sympathetic now. The narrative shifted again. Suddenly, I was the villain. Suddenly, Brittany was the victim. Suddenly, my exposure of her actions felt like a disproportionate response to her pain. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. In trying to tell the truth, I'd accidentally made it so complicated that nobody knew what the truth even was anymore. Brittany had successfully reframed the story. She was no longer the cruel bully. She was a damaged girl doing damaged things. And she was right. Sunday morning, Brittany called me. The school had apparently suspended all 4 of them pending investigation, and her mother had her on suicide watch. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because she needed to tell me something crucial. "I lied in that video," she whispered. Well, not lied. Oversimplified. She explained that yes, her brother's bullying had affected her. But that wasn't the only reason. She talked about her mother's expectations, about how she felt like she had to be the perfect daughter, the perfect student, the perfect girl. She talked about how when her mother found out about her secret friends, people from the wrong side of the tracks, kids with problems, she'd been humiliated and grounded. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," Brittany said. "I was trying to hurt myself. I was trying to prove that I was the kind of person who didn't care about anyone, including myself. And you were there, and you believed in me, and that made it worse because it meant I was failing at being that person." I listened, and against everything, I started to understand. This wasn't as simple as bully and being a victim. We'd both been performing. We'd both been broken. We just handled it differently. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly. "I don't know," she said. "But I don't want to be the villain of your story. I want to be the girl who almost destroyed herself. And I want that to mean something." Kevin came to me Monday with something he discovered while digging through old yearbooks and social media archives. The group that had bullied me? They'd all been bullied in middle school. Every single one. Brittany by some girls who'd called her plastic. Jasmine by her own cousin. Marcus by his father. Tyler by a different friend group. Bullying is cyclical, Kevin explained, showing me his research. It's learned behavior. People who've been hurt other people. And nobody ever stops the cycle because we don't want to understand it. We just want to punish it. It was an uncomfortable realization. The people I'd exposed weren't evil. They weren't monsters. They were broken kids doing what broken kids do, passing along their pain like an infection. I called David and James that night. I think I made a mistake, I said. Not with the video, but with what comes next. We exposed them, but we didn't give them any path forward. We just made sure everyone knew they were bad. So what do we do? David asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know what I don't want to do. I don't want them to be permanently destroyed. I don't want other kids to be permanently destroyed. I want the cycle to actually break. It was a completely different challenge than what I'd started with. It was much harder than revenge. It was almost impossible. But standing in my room that Monday night, I decided it was the only thing worth trying to do. Tuesday, I did something nobody expected. I called a meeting with Brittany, Jasmine, Marcus, Tyler, and my entire team. It was tense. The air in the library felt like it might combust. I want to talk about what happens next, I said simply. And I want everyone to have a voice. What followed was 4 hours of the most honest conversation any of us had ever had. Brittany talked about her expectations. Jasmine talked about her insecurity about her body. Marcus talked about his father's constant criticism. Tyler talked about the loneliness of feeling invisible. And I talked about what it felt like to be betrayed. What it felt like to be exposed. What it felt like to be humiliated. But here's what was different. We weren't talking past each other. We were actually listening. I want to apologize, Brittany said finally. Not because I'm scared of the consequences. Because I actually hurt you. Because I actually know what hurt feels like now. Because I understand what I did. She looked at me with such genuine remorse that I believed her. Not because she was good at performing emotion. She was. But because this wasn't a performance. This was what real accountability looked like. I accept your apology, I said. And I need to apologize too. I exposed you to destroy you. I told myself it was about truth, but it was about revenge. And that wasn't okay either. The room went quiet. Everyone was realizing what this moment meant. We were all going to have to find a way forward that wasn't punishment. Wednesday morning, David showed us something he'd uncovered. It wasn't about Brittany or her group. It was about something bigger. He'd been digging into school culture, and he'd found evidence that bullying wasn't just a student problem. It was structural. Teachers who looked the way when harassment happened. Administrators who called victims troublemakers. A guidance counselor who told a bullied student that kids are just mean sometimes, you have to toughen up. There was a girl, another Maya actually, who'd reported harassment to the administration 4 times. 4 times. And nothing happened. She'd eventually dropped out of school. The students aren't the only problem, David said. The system is designed to ignore bullying. And when students figure that out, they learn that cruelty has no real consequence. The realization hit us all at once. We'd been so focused on personal vendetta that we'd missed the actual systemic issue. The school wasn't protecting students from each other. The school was actively enabling it by doing nothing. We need to change this, Brittany said suddenly. All of us. Together. It was wild that she was saying it. The girl who'd bullied me, now wanting to fix the system that had allowed her to bully me. But that's how change works sometimes. You need people from both sides of a problem to actually solve it. We spent 2 weeks preparing something new. Not a revenge video. A documentary. A real one. We interviewed current students. We interviewed former students who'd been bullied. We interviewed parents. We interviewed teachers. We interviewed administrators. And then we interviewed ourselves, all of us, talking honestly about what we'd each done wrong and why. The difference between this and my first video was profound. This wasn't about exposure. It was about education. It wasn't about making anyone look bad. It was about showing how systems and individuals fail each other. Brittany was surprisingly vulnerable in her interviews. She talked about the pressure she'd felt, but she also took full responsibility for her choices. I chose to hurt her, she said. I could have dealt with my pain differently. I didn't. Jasmine talked about body image and social media. Marcus talked about toxic masculinity. Tyler talked about invisibility and how cruelty made him feel visible. And I talked about choosing revenge instead of justice, about the temptation to destroy people instead of understanding them, about how hard it is to be better than the system that hurt you. Kevin compiled all of it. David edited it. James organized the release. By early June, we had a 40-minute documentary ready. The real question was, what did we do with it? June 15th, we presented the documentary to the school board. All of us, standing together, not as victim and bullies, but as students with something important to say. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, the school district announced major changes. New anti-bullying protocols, mandatory training for teachers, a student advocate position, resources for both bullied students and students who bully. News outlets covered it differently this time. Instead of "Girl Exposes Bullies," the headlines read, "Student Victims and Bullies Unite to Reform School System," and how one school became model for anti-bullying initiatives. But the real impact wasn't in the news coverage. It was in how our school changed. Teachers actually intervened in conflicts now. Students were trained to be bystander intervention advocates. The administration responded to complaints. And most importantly, there was a culture shift. A recognition that cruelty wasn't just a personality trait, it was learned behavior that could be unlearned. 3 months later, I ran into Sarah Johnson, the girl who'd been bullied freshman year. She approached me nervously. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Not for revenge, for fixing it, so it doesn't happen to anyone else the way it happened to us." I felt something settle inside me. Not satisfaction, exactly, but purpose. Finally, I'd done something that actually mattered. Senior year started differently than I'd ever imagined. Brittany and I weren't best friends anymore. That friendship had been real, but it had also been rooted in both of us performing versions of ourselves. We couldn't go back to that. But we were something else now. We were allies. We were people who'd both failed and succeeded. We were evidence that change was possible. Some people didn't like our story. They wanted Brittany to be permanently destroyed. They wanted me to remain permanently victimized. They wanted a clean narrative, not a complicated one. Those people left mean comments and sent hateful messages. But we'd learned that sometimes the people most upset by resolution are the ones who were invested in the conflict. Jasmine had started seeing a therapist, working through her own trauma. Marcus had joined the boys' support group that formed at school. Tyler had actually become one of our best advocates, talking to younger students about the danger of following the crowd into cruelty. What surprised me most was how many other students started coming forward with their own stories. Not to get revenge, but to get help. Not to destroy their bullies, but to understand the cycle. By November, Kevin had documented 17 cases of students reaching out about bullying. All of them had been resolved not through punishment, but through understanding and intervention. The cycle was actually breaking. December, and something unexpected happened. Brittany's mother sent me a letter. She thanked me, not for destroying her daughter, but for saving her. She explained that after the video went viral, Brittany had experienced a complete mental breakdown. She'd been in inpatient treatment for a month. She'd struggled with suicidal ideation. She'd been medicated for depression and anxiety. But the documentary, and the work we'd all done together afterward, had given Brittany a reason to heal. A purpose. A way to make her actions mean something other than pain. "My daughter was broken," her mother wrote. "Not evil. Just broken. And you gave her a way to mend." I read the letter 3 times, and each time I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that Brittany was healing. Guilt that my first instinct had been to destroy her. Gratitude that we'd course-corrected, and a deeper understanding of how much damage our actions, mine and Brittany's, could do if we didn't think beyond the moment. I showed the letter to my therapist, whom I'd been seeing since prom. "Does this change how you think about what happened?" she asked. "No," I said, "but it changes how I think about what I did about it." In January of senior year, Brittany asked to meet me for coffee. Just the two of us. No agenda, no documentation, no witnesses. We sat in a booth at a local cafe, and neither of us knew how to start. Finally, Brittany spoke. "I've been thinking about what I said in that first video. About why I hurt you. And I realized I told you the story that sounded best, not the real story. What's the real story? I asked. I was in love with you, she said quietly. Not romantically. Not exactly. But I loved you more than I loved anyone else. And I hated myself for that because in my house, love was a weakness. Love meant you could be controlled. Love meant you could be destroyed. The confession hung in the air between us. It explained so much. The intenseness of our friendship, the way she'd acted out against me specifically, the way she'd seemed desperate to prove she didn't care about me. I needed to hurt you to prove I didn't need you, she continued. And when I did it, I proved the opposite. I proved that I cared so much that I was capable of cruelty to hide it. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you deserve to know the truth. Not the version I wanted you to see, but the actual truth. And because I'm finally healing enough to tell it. We talked for 3 hours that day. Really talked. Not around the pain, but through it. Brittany explained that her mother's perfectionism had been suffocating. That her brother's suicide attempt had terrified her into trying to never need anyone. That her entire personality had been designed as armor. And then you came along, she said. This girl who was real and vulnerable and actually happy sometimes. And you made me want to be real too. Which meant I had to be vulnerable. Which felt like dying. So you died instead, I said. I tried to. And you brought me back. Just not the way I expected. What struck me most was realizing that she'd been as trapped as I had. I'd been trapped by my own insecurity. She'd been trapped by perfectionism and fear. We'd both been performing. We'd just performed different characters. That realization became the foundation for a new kind of honesty at our school. When the next anti-bullying assembly happened, we told that story. All of it. Brittany didn't shy away from the cruel parts. I didn't shy away from the vindictive parts. We showed that bullying doesn't happen because people are bad. It happens because people are scared and hurt and doing the best they can with broken tools. February brought a revelation that changed everything again. David found something while researching school policies. Our school's administration had a specific protocol when bullying was reported. Investigate minimally, close the case quietly, and avoid any negative attention to the school's reputation. They hadn't actually broken this protocol, but they'd come close. When parents of bullied students had tried to escalate their concerns, the administration had discouraged legal action. When the media had tried to investigate, the school had given non-committal statements. The system isn't just ignoring bullying, David explained. The system is actively protecting bullies because addressing bullying would reflect poorly on the school. This realization galvanized us in a new way. We weren't just fixing student culture. We were fixing institutional culture. And that was much harder and much more important. We presented our findings to the school board again, this time with documentation. And this time, we asked for something specific. External oversight. A third-party organization dedicated to tracking and addressing bullying. Transparency in how cases are handled. Real consequences for administrators who didn't report. The pushback was intense. The superintendent felt attacked. The principal felt betrayed. Parents felt like we were being ungrateful for the changes already made. But we were right. And eventually, the district agreed. By spring of senior year, something remarkable had happened. The prom incident, which had been a marker of shame for both of us, had become a marker of change. Local news ran a feature on our documentary. National education organizations reached out asking us to speak at conferences. Other schools wanted to implement our anti-bullying model. And Brittany, she became the most vocal advocate for change. She spoke to her therapist in regular interviews. She talked about her own mental health journey. She became, in a strange way, the face of student recovery and growth. It was bizarre. The girl who'd humiliated me had become famous, but not for cruelty. For healing. For showing how a person who'd done something wrong could genuinely change. Sometimes I get angry about it. Sometimes it felt like she was getting credit for something I'd initiated. But mostly, I was just grateful that she was using her platform for good. We didn't become best friends again. But we became something important. Proof that people could hurt each other and still build something better together. 3 months before graduation, Kevin finished his research. He documented every student bullying case at our school over the past 4 years. And his findings were staggering. 32 students had reported bullying. 28 of those cases had been completely ignored or mishandled by the administration. But here's what was most important. After our intervention, not a single reported bullying case remained unaddressed. We didn't know what to do with that power, with that knowledge, with that ability to actually help people. We decided to form a permanent student organization, not focused on punishment or revenge, but on education and intervention. We called it the Cycle Breakers. Our goal was simple: stop bullying before it starts by helping students understand where their pain comes from and where their cruelty leads. The response was overwhelming. 60 students signed up the first week. By the end of the month, it was 200. By graduation, it was 300. We weren't just fixing our school. We were creating something that could spread. Graduation day arrived, and I had to give a speech. Not because I was valedictorian. I wasn't, but because the graduating class had voted for me. They wanted to hear from the girl whose pain had sparked change. Standing at that podium, looking out at 400 students, I realized I had no idea what to say. There was no story that could sum it up, no narrative that could contain it. So I told the truth. A year ago, I was humiliated in front of you, I said. And my first instinct was to hurt the people who did it, to destroy them, to make them feel as small as they made me feel. I paused, looking directly at Brittany sitting in the front row. I don't know if I would have done it, but I wanted to. And that's the part of the story that matters most. The wanting, the desire to hurt, the impulse to get revenge. That impulse doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. But what you do with that impulse, that's what makes you who you are. I talked about Brittany's growth, about how she'd chosen to change instead of defending herself, about how that choice was harder than any revenge could ever be. We tell stories about victims and villains, I continued. But that's not real life. Real life is people who've been broken, trying to figure out how not to break other people. And sometimes we fail. Sometimes we hurt people we love. But if we're brave enough to see that, brave enough to change that, then we can break the cycle. Not for revenge, but for healing. 6 months into college, I got a text from Brittany. She'd been accepted to a university with a strong psychology program. She wanted to study bullying prevention and institutional trauma. She wanted to make it her life's work. I wasn't surprised. Her pain had become her purpose. The prom video that had once destroyed me now served as the beginning of something much bigger. The Cycle Breakers program at our high school had expanded to 5 schools. The documentary we made was being used in health classes across the state. 3 students who'd been bullied had reached out thanking us for making them feel seen and heard. Would I do it again? Would I choose the path I chose, knowing the complications it would bring? Yes, but I would also make different mistakes. I would hurt people who didn't deserve it, and they would have to forgive me, and I would have to forgive myself. That's the real story. Not a girl seeking revenge, not a bully getting destroyed, but people learn that cruelty is learned, healing is possible, and the best revenge isn't destruction, it's change. Brittany texted again. Thank you for not destroying me, she wrote. Thank you for becoming someone worth saving, I replied. And that, finally, was the end. Not a perfect resolution, not happily ever after, but something real: growth, understanding, the beginning of actually being okay. The cycle was broken, and we were all finally free.